Hi everyone, and welcome back to the special edition of the Londonderry View. And tonight we have with us Maureen Hardy, who is willing and going to be running for our budget committee. And we're really appreciative of your being here with us tonight, Maureen. So welcome.
Welcome to the View.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we thought, this is an opportunity for all candidates to come on our show and just, share with all of our residents why you decided to run and a little bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Maureen Hardy. I am relatively new to Londonderry. I moved here about 2 years ago from Illinois.
Oh.
And I was attracted to the Live Free or Die state. That's one of the many reasons, one of many reasons I came to New Hampshire, because it's a beautiful state. And I've been here after about a year and a half. I decided to go to the Leadership Londonderry program, and I've been in the Leadership Londonderry program. We're going to finish up in May, but we were encouraged to participate and volunteer. And the budget committee is a good place to start because it touches on all the different areas of government in both this, the town and the school district. So it will allow me to continue to learn as I meet with all the representatives from those organizations about the budget. And it's important to me to serve, and one of the things that the budget committee functions as is the eyes and ears of the taxpayer. So I would like to represent the taxpayer. I would be elected by the taxpayer, so I want to be the taxpayer's advocate and be able to ask questions and understand why there's certain spending.
That sounds like a good reason to be on it, yeah.
Yeah. And good point, Maureen, that the budget committee is unique because you work with the town, but you also are there with the school side of things. So boy, you get an entire perspective of where all of our tax
You get the whole picture.
money is spent.
Right. Not just the one side.
Great learning
Yeah.
base, that's for sure. And and you've been here 2 years.
I've been here 2 years.
That's exciting.
I'm retired, so I have time.
What did
to
you
serve.
retire from?
Well, I started out as a microbiologist in the clinical laboratory. I did that for 25 years.
Wow.
So I'm a clinical microbiologist. I worked on the infection control task force for the hospital and the ambulatory care for the organization. When I left after 25 years, I went into research and development for diagnostic devices. So we were working on devices that could detect sepsis in 3 hours instead of 3 days.
Wow.
To identify the organism and determine what antibiotics should be used. And I did that for 5 years, and then I went into the pharmaceutical industry in pharmacovigilance, which means drug safety. So it's the part of the pharmaceutical industry that wants to make sure that their products are safe, and if there's any safety signal, that they're investigated. I was in the compliance part of that, so that's what I did. I also owned a fast food restaurant, so I was a business owner. I've taught microbiology, clinical microbiology at the community college level, and I taught medical ethics at the university level.
My goodness.
Wow, an extensive list.
Yeah.
So I have a degree.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Boy. And you were saying about your degrees.
Oh, I have my bachelor's degree is in cellular physiology, and I have a master's degree in epidemiology. So from all of that experience, you could say I have a great attention to detail and kind of an analytical mind. If this were Star Trek, I would be Mr. Spock. I'm not Dr. McCoy. So
Very good, very
Yes.
impressive.
Wow.
so that's about me.
I was thinking
Yeah.
truly attention to detail because your
Yeah.
background,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's really what you need with the budget committee. It's really, unraveling, looking, asking questions.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is very,
That's
that would be a nice step for you to get involved into doing something in the town.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Yeah, so it would be a start to doing things in
Right.
the town. Right.
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
plan.
Very
And you
good.
really enjoyed Leadership Londonderry?
I am really enjoying Leadership
That's-
Londonderry.
Oh, because you're in the program now.
I'm in the program
Yes.
right
Oh,
now.
my
So I think
goodness.
in March they come to the senior center. I'm the senior affairs director, so
Oh, okay.
I have to give my little spiel when they all come to the senior center.
right.
I think I think Drew comes from here, and Art comes from recreation. I think it's three of
Oh,
us
at the
that do it at the
same
senior
time.
center.
And we
Oh,
just did
nice.
ours on elections. Were you on that call?
I was on that
I
call.
I thought you looked familiar, but I don't know if it's from when you signed up or if from that. Yeah, it's
Very
a
good.
phenomenal program. And
It
it
is.
inspired you.
And
That's
I was going to say that's great that she
Yes.
was inspired to get involved
Yes,
just because you went through the program or you're currently in the program, but she didn't even finish the program yet, but it was enough to inspire her
Wow.
to get started and
And that's what
jump
they
into
need.
the race.
They need people to get involved, to come into
Yeah.
the town and to
right.
get
new
into
ideas,
involved.
especially where you're
Mhm.
not from the town. That
Right.
brings in a whole different
A new
set of
perspective.
ideas, and you
Yeah.
learn from other towns and communities what worked, what didn't work,
Yeah.
and being a business owner.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn coming from a different state, so I'm trying to soak it all up. It's very interesting. I've been to the deliberative sessions, both of them, just to try to learn how that
Yeah.
works. And I have to say about the Leadership Londonderry group, you're going to find it's a very spirited group, and you're going to get a lot of questions. So,
Well, that's a good
That's
thing.
excellent.
Yeah.
That really is
Very nice.
exciting.
Well, in closing, is there anything you'd like to add?
in closing, I would just like to say that I really look forward to being an advocate for the taxpayers. Again, the taxpayers would be the ones that are electing me, so I work for the taxpayers, and I would welcome any questions. I sent a letter to the newspaper, and my email address is in there, so I
You
could
can
read.
give it if you'd like to.
Okay.
Absolutely. Whatever information you'd like to. Maureen.
It's meauxx2@gmail.com. And I better say that again. meauxx2. And I'd be happy to talk to you on the phone too. I just don't have social media, so I'm giving my email address.
That's
Very
perfect.
good.
And I think, weren't we going to list all the candidates that came on? Weren't we going to
Yes.
list their
Yep,
emails?
as long as we have their
Okay.
permission, we'll
Yeah.
do that too.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
wonderful.
Yes, that's
It's
perfect.
great.
Yeah,
So-
that's
And
great.
then if any of our viewers have questions, they can reach out to you and.
Thank you.
you
Thank you
know.
for having me on.
Oh,
Oh, we're glad
welcome.
that you
We're
wanted to
glad
come
you-
on.
Yes.
Yes, it's
absolutely.
been a pleasure.
It shows an interest when people want to come on
It
and
does.
express themselves and let the people in the town know.
Thank you. Thank
They
you so
are.
much.
Well, thank you
Okay,
too.
well,
Well,
thank
thank
you
you.
for coming.
Thank you. Here with us now we have Jan Mclaughlin, and she is running for two elected positions. The first being trustee of the Trustfund, and then also to be one of our library trustees. So Jan, welcome. We are just so happy to have you here
Welcome to
with
the
us.
show.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jan Mclaughlin, and I've been in town since 1986, so I guess that's about 36 years. Well, going on 37, I guess. And we moved here with, I moved here with my husband and our two kids, and I still live in town. My husband passed away just before Christmas, but from the time we first started in Londonderry, we knew that we'd found home. John was a trustee of the Trustfund, and during that time they redid the regulations. So I have read through them a number of times as things were being word processed. Although John usually had the red pen, I have had my red pen too. So I feel running for the trustee of the Trust Fund was to honor my husband's service to the town. That's one of the reasons that I decided to run for trustee of the Trust Fund. Trustee of the Trust Funds doesn't really sound like anything in particular. It's really about the cemeteries in town. We have a lot of cemeteries in town, but unfortunately, there's only one with spaces available, one of the public cemeteries with spaces available for residents of town to be buried in. So it's kind of really important that some group of people are taking care of that and remembering to make sure that people have a place to call home forever in a town like Londonderry. Our town keeps getting bigger. We have more people moving to town. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the spaces we have are limited, and that's something we need to plan for. The trustees of the trust fund is something that's set aside by the New Hampshire rules and regulations, and I would like to be considered for your vote for the trustee of the trust funds to honor my husband John, but also to help look at the cemeteries. The other one is the Leach Library. We have a library trustee. We have a wonderful library in town, and my kids used it a lot. And frankly, I didn't use it a lot in my working years. But in 2020, I had surgery on my neck, and I couldn't really move my head back and forth or tilt my head, and I had to spend a lot of time lying flat. Well, how was I going to learn things or keep myself occupied? And my sister, who happens to be a library trustee in her town in another part of New Hampshire, said, remember, you have a great library in town. And I called the librarians, even though the library was closed because of COVID, and said, so what's the story? And they explained the process. And I called and talked with a librarian who basically curated a list of authors for subjects that I liked. I mean, I knew some authors that I read, but I found a whole new list of authors that I'd never read before. And they keep a list for me at the library, so I can always make sure, oh, and who was that other author I wanted to read again? So, and you would call, I don't know if any of you have done that during when we've been closed for COVID, but if you called, they would put together books. In this case, they were putting together CDs for me. So I was listening to books on tape, basically. And we have a great collection of CDs and all kinds of electronic media because we have a lot of people who commute from Londonderry. So I still find that listening to a book on CD is a great way to go to sleep. I have a little speaker that goes under my pillow, and I can use it, although I guess now I don't have to use the speaker. I can just let it play. The cat doesn't seem to mind. And the library trustees, the important thing is to make sure that our library stays strong and that we're keeping track of helping our public librarians to serve our public in a variety of ways and keeping track of the technology changes as well as, what our needs are for information. Most people don't get a newspaper anymore. Most people, a lot of kids don't have books in their houses anymore. I read a Kindle, but it feels like a book. But anyway, so it's really important for our library to be strong, and I saw there were a number of openings this year and said, well, I've put my hat in the ring for the trustee of the trust funds. The library would be another place. So that's kind of the story.
Well, I
That
have
sounds
to say,
wonderful.
Jan, that's probably one of the best explanations of the trustees of the trust funds that I've ever heard, because when we come to that position, we all stumble a little.
is
Like,
that?
we're
What is it?
cemeteries,
Exactly,
but how
yeah.
do you explain it? And so thank you, because you brought a lot of clarity to that, and also the trustee of the library. Because they are, they're kind of a little bit different,
Right.
and yet so vitally important.
Right.
So for trustee of the trust fund with the cemeteries, now you said there's only one that has space. So is that something that group would research to find another plot of land that
Well,
could be used?
Potentially. Right now, the library that's open is the Pillsbury Cemetery, which is up on Hovey Road. And I know that last year, and I guess 2 years ago, and again this year, there's a article for on the ballot to approve for funding of the expansion of the cemetery to add some more space. We were donated some space a few years back by the Woodmont folks. So we do have a little bit more space that we can grow into. But it's not just simply you get some land and then bingo, you have a cemetery. They have to, level everything and divide things off and get it registered and figure out how many spots it is. And we do have some older cemeteries that may have space in them, but they've all been purchased by families that may have moved away and may not even know. They have cemetery plots in Londonderry, but that's the way things are. So part of it would be, we might discuss about property that maybe someone was thinking about donating to town, or, but all of those things has to go through, if they need funds for this, other than the trusts that are set up specifically for a particular purpose, they would have to come back for the town like they're doing for the expansion. To get permission to expend those funds. And they work with the town administrators to make sure that those items get brought up in the correct manner so that it can get voted on by town members during the ballot.
And there are 3 members with Dave Wally on that committee, is that correct, or 2?
There's 3 members total.
3 total.
Yeah, I was going to
okay.
say, I believe Dave should be, because I think Steve was on that.
Yeah, so it would be
So it would
Dave
be
Wally.
Dave would be on it as well.
Right.
Boy.
So it's a rotation. Usually there's one that comes up at a time. I think there's actually 2 up this time. Maybe
For trustee, just 1.
Just one.
Yep,
Okay.
just 1 this time.
So
yep.
anyway, so John, how John got on it was a whole other story. But my mother and I thought we'd write him in because nobody was running. It was just one of those positions. But again, nobody knew what it was, so we had to look it up and research what it was. And I say John had done a lot of. He wrote technical things for aircraft instruments, so he was used to going through contracts and things like that. So it was a good thing for him to do in retirement. And as I say, now that I'm familiar with a lot of the things with the trust fund and a lot of the regulations, it seems a natural fit for that.
Very good. And he would have you go through a lot of it, as I remember.
Oh,
right?
sure.
With the
I would
you were
just
very
read-
involved
I
with
would
that.
just read through, what he wanted me to read through, and and I'd say, okay, yeah, that sounds clear to me, or I don't know. I used to work at the Department of Education, and I've been a teacher and a variety of other things. So I'm used to reading lots of documents. And used to dealing with, the legislative process at the state level, and of course, voting in town. Very important that we all get out and vote. I know that a lot of people say, oh, well, it's just town elections. But, at the same time, when our tax bill comes, people say, well, wait, how come the tax bill's more? Well, you got to come to the elections. You've got to come and find out what's
Speak
going
with your
on.
feet. Right,
Okay,
absolutely.
well, in closing, is there anything else you'd like to add for the next few?
No, I just would like to say that I'd like you to consider voting for me, both for the trustee of the trust funds, but also for the Leach Library trustee. And remember that it's really important, no matter who you support, that you come and vote in a few weeks so that your voice can be heard.
Okay.
Thank you,
Great.
Jen.
Well, thank you
Thanks
for
for
coming.
Thank you very
on.
much for having
Thank
me.
you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. Next, we have with us Ted Combs, who is running for our town council. And Ted, we want to thank you for being with us this evening and for being willing to run and serve the town. So tell us a little bit about why
I
you're...
think, excuse me, first we need to say thank you for the flowers.
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
you're welcome.
Beautiful flowers.
Yes, thank
Yep,
you.
thank
Really
you.
very
Very
special
nice,
for
very
us.
thoughtful.
I figured
Yeah.
Valentine's Day, every lady needs a rose.
Thank
Aw,
you. Very much
No,
appreciated.
thank you. That was a really lovely gesture, and we're all a little tired, you know, at the end of the day, so you really brightened us up.
Yeah.
We
You're
welcome.
appreciate it, so thank you
So,
so much.
Go ahead, tell us about yourself and why you're running.
Of course. So I'm Ted Combs. I've lived in town for about 30 years. Our family lived for about 4 years in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and then we moved back to town. I was in the high school marching band. I was an Eagle Scout in town. I played rec soccer. You know, I grew up in Londonderry. I feel, you know, I've traveled all over the Max Apple orchards, all over the different orchards. Certainly seen the town grow from, you know, 2 lights in town to multiple lights in town. I've seen us, you know, become a small town to now a medium-sized town and growing, and seen all the economic development over time that we have. And then I went on to my undergrad at Suffolk and got my MBA at SNHU. And for the past 10 years or so, I've been working in construction management and real estate development. And you know, I've worked with people, you know, low-ranking people who do all the, you know, little stuff in a company to CEOs. So I certainly know how to work with all levels of people and different personalities. And I've also dealt with multi-million-dollar budgets and worked on repairing facilities and maintaining them. And as well, now, I've been elected to the Budget Committee in the past for 3 years, and I was also on the Planning Board for a while, and then I was voted on to the Town Council for 3 years, and now, you know, appointed to the Planning Board again, and I'm certainly looking forward to being back on the council and being a good steward for the town. And you know, I think it takes, you know, knowing how to manage million-dollar budgets, knowing how buildings and facilities run, knowing about economic development, that really encompasses this position. You know, certainly you can have your heart in the position and a heart for the people, but if you don't know how to actually do the position, I think it, you know, makes it hard. And it can, do you know how to make the right decisions? You know, you can listen to people all day long about different things one way or the other, but in the end, you got to be able to know what's the right thing for Londonderry.
It's a very good point.
Yeah, that is a
Yeah.
good point.
And I see, going forward, I know we're seeing, you know, some of the revaluations of some of the commercial and industrial buildings, you know, affecting our tax rates over time. And I see that maybe the council needs to take a look at, you know, changing our position a little bit and, you know, helping leading the staff a bit more upon economic development. And how can we entice more companies to come to Londonderry? We have more land by the airport and by Pettingill Road. And I know that, you know, there may be development eventually on Woodmont, but we need to figure out how can we get these companies to come better? Or how can we help these developers so that, you know, Londonderry will be a thriving town going forward? And unfortunately, you know, between healthcare and benefits and pay and salaries, you know, things don't get cheaper. I mean, everyone wants a raise at their jobs, and everyone wants a raise at being either a teacher, a firefighter, or a police
Right.
officer. And we need to find streams of revenue to be able to offset that over time. And you got to be able to not just look at tomorrow. You got to be able to look at, you know, 3 years, 5 years, 20 years down the road.
Right.
And where are we going to be?
Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah, very, very true.
Do you ladies have any questions for me?
Nothing off the
Well,
top
tell
of
us
my
about your family.
Certainly. So I live in town with my wife, Kara Massingham, and our 9-month-old son, Grayson. And then I also have my parents who still live in town, George and Cindy Combs. And so, you know, we've been here in Londonderry for about 22 years, and then before we moved to Pittsburgh, I think about another 10 years before that. So, you know, we've been involved in all sorts of things, from St. Mark's Church to the Lions Hall to doing all sorts of things for Old Home Day to you name it. You know, our family basically volunteers. And I think part of that is being an Eagle Scout and driving home, being a good citizen for the community, and giving back.
That makes a big difference.
Very well said.
Yeah, very big difference.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add into this, telling them to vote and?
Certainly. Well, I think for this position, as you know, I've kind of led on, is that I've come up with a new slogan this time around that experience matters. And, you know, certainly I've learned this, you know, from John Farrell over time, that he's been in the role for quite a while, and it takes experience and knowledge to be able to know how to do the position. And I think with my education, my experience, my elected experience, really culminates to leading on this position very well. And certainly I look forward to everyone's vote on March 8th.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very good.
it's coming up
Yeah.
quickly.
Oh,
Yeah.
It is, quickly.
Yeah.
Boy.
Few
Well,
more
3
weeks.
weeks.
Yes, 3 more
out,
weeks,
Yeah,
so.
hard to believe. And
Yes.
no. Ted, we thank you so much for our beautiful roses.
You're welcome.
And
That we
you
do.
know, and for
Thank you
sharing
for
your
coming
story
on.
and your vision with us. You know, it's very much appreciated. And
And in
Thank you.
closing, is there anything you'd like to add just before we close it out?
Certainly, everyone stay safe in the winter this year. We're having a lot of melting and refreezing and melting. Hopefully, with these days coming ahead, please stay safe out there.
Very good. Well, thank you for coming
Thank
on.
you.
thank
welcome.
you so much,
Thank
Ted.
you.
Thank you.
very much. And here with us now, we have John Farrell, who is running for the Londonderry Town Council. John, thank you for being with us.
Thanks
Ladies,
for coming on.
always a pleasure. Always happy to be here at the real view, not the one that's on the other station, but the real one that exists here in Londonderry, because it's the pure view.
Yes, it is.
The nice, positive.
We're the nice ones.
Yeah.
We're the
right.
nice ones. So let me tell you a little bit about what's been happening, why I'm doing this again. Recently the Derry News and the Londonderry Times asked me to a few questions, and they said, why do you want to do this, and why are you different? And and as I kind of pondered that thought and everything, I thought about my dad. My dad served in the community I grew up in for over 20 years, and he was on the planning board and the zoning board, and and it was something that he became passionate about. And if I look back at the town that I grew up in, there was a lot of similarities to that area that there is in Londonderry, that you really wanted to keep it to be this, kind of secret, great place. I mean, you get to come here, but don't tell anybody about it. And then, I had to think about it, and I said, my mother-in-law, Pearl, would, be an avid reader of the newspapers, would talk to the people at Shaw's where she worked and everything, and she would go into, well, John, why do you think they're doing that? And why did they make this decision on the planning board and everything? And and I was on the planning board, and and we talk about it, and she had a real keen interest, for what went on in the community. But again, someone else who had been here for 30, 40 years and really kind of watched the community go from the 5,000 or 6,000 people to the 26,000 people that it is today. So as I continued to look at this, and I said, I've been doing this for 12 years and on the town council, 11 years on the planning board. So what some people would say, what is there left to do? So I look at it and I say, seems like there's always something to do. Bill Hart, the police chief, and I kind of have a running joke of where we say, this is like one of the best kept secrets around. We do things a certain way. We do them the right way. We really are thoughtful about how we think about things from the standpoint of being supportive of the community. We go through things and thinking about the latest crisis around PFOAs, and while it's very hard to hold the company accountable for doing that, we still need to have a plan. We still need to have an action item of where we keep taking steps forward to improve those kinds of things. I look back at it and I say, what do we things we've accomplished. We've been able to do things like grow the commercial tax base revenue, but while always remembering to keep the core of the community proper and safe. And the core of the community, I mean, is everything inside away from the highways, the residential areas, the Common, West Road, Laffa, the areas around the schools and everything. Make sure that we're always keeping all those people safe. Keep everyone in the community, not only the community at large, but that smaller community in the schools. I mean, what Londonderry does well is they focus on those individual groups. What do we have to do to make sure that our children every day are going to be secure in the schools? That's the function of the town. And while the schools have a certain function, that's in education. It's the function of the town, the first responders. Lately, I've gotten very educated around the Public Works Department. And the Public Works Department has a saying, we lead the way for blue and red. In other words, we get the roads clear so that everybody can get out there. It really comes down to the safety of the community, the safety of the people. But what I also found is that I had to develop a skill to become an excellent listener. I really had to be able to not only listen, but hear what they're saying to you. But at the same time, you've got to be a really good problem solver, because the community should not have patience. They don't have to have patience. They want answers. But you don't have to be right every time, but you have to be progressive in your thinking around, if that doesn't work, so we'll make another decision. We'll keep trying to figure out what those right things are to do. And you look back over the history of being here and coming to this town 30 years ago and saying, how did I wind up in New Hampshire? How did I wind up raising my family here? This is home. This is now home. I love this community. My children want to live here. They want to raise their families here. It's a good place. And it's only as good as the people who get involved, volunteer, and serve. And we need more volunteers. At some point, I need to understand that I'll reach a certain point in which it's no longer be the humble servant. It's time to transition and find those people who you can transition to. Mm-hmm. I also believe that's part of my role if I continue to go forward in the town council, is that I need to start working harder to find who's next, who takes over, who continues with the vision of keeping this as a great place. And that's something I've given a lot of thought to. I mean, we're transitioning from one town manager to another town manager. That's going to be, a task that's going to require a lot of work from the council to make sure that those things are, that we hold dear to us here in Londonderry continue to happen. But first and foremost for me is that we have about 200 employees. And in my heart, I worry about them every day. We have people that we ask to do things and go out and rescue people, be the first people who show up. I literally pray for their safety, not only every day, but every town council meeting. We take a moment of silence for those first responders because they're the core of that piece. But then we have the other piece of the town offices and the library and everything who fulfill vital functions so that everyone else can do their job. Because if we don't have that piece, we lose the other piece. It has to work like a machine, and all those pieces have to move and work together. So what I'm asking is that I want to continue to do that. I think we have a little bit more work to do. I mean, we just reassessed the entire town and have had to explain why that had to happen. And if you know anything about what's going on in the real estate market and everything, it's gone kind of crazy. And we're trying to play catch up. We have to address things like the commercial revenue. The commercial revenue, we just need to keep that on the outskirts of town, but keep funding from that side so that we can even out the tax rate and try to keep things low on the town side. We operate as 3 different forms of government. We have the library, which the town council funds. We have the town government, and then we have the school government. Can't do a lot about the other 2 forms of government, but the form of government in which we work in, we always strive just to be excellent. And what can we do better? What's next? It's never rest on the laurels of what we did today. What can we do tomorrow?
That was
Very good. That was beautiful.
Questions?
Came from the heart
Yeah, I was going to say that was a very heartfelt talk,
Yeah,
yes.
when you look back.
definitely. And you really explained it all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, in the way it should be explained.
yeah.
Proud to serve. I asked people to come out on March 8th and vote. Folks, only 17,800 people voted in the presidential election. Only 3,000 people voted in the March elections. We decide on $122 million in March. It's your money. Come out, vote. Your voice matters, your vote matters. It matters more now than it does in a national election because this is your money, your time.
Definitely. I've always said that the town elections are very
Oh my
important.
goodness,
Yeah.
so important.
And the people just don't come out for them.
And that's when they have their say. Don't complain later.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kathy,
you
you've
don't-
always
I
said
always
that,
say
right?
that.
Don't
Definitely,
come
yeah.
out,
You
vote.
don't have
Yeah.
a right to complain if you didn't come out and vote, if you didn't go to the deliberative and ask your
Yeah.
questions.
That's
They have to
right.
come.
Then
they
don't
have to come
complain.
out.
No,
You know,
it's,
I don't want to hear it.
yeah,
Okay,
no.
well, in wrapping up, is there anything else you'd like to throw in there?
You know, I guess all I would say is I really appreciate the people who take the time to call me. I mean, I like to get phone calls. People will call and they'll say, John, I just don't understand that. And I'll spend whatever time there is to spend with them. Or they'll send an email and I'll send it back to them and say, do you want to just talk? And, you know, and we'll talk about what things look like, what the process is. Why did we make a particular decision? So please come out and vote. Please vote for me. And call me. I mean, you know, I'm happy to take the calls. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you for
coming
coming
on.
on.
Thank you very
And
much.
good luck.
Yeah,
Yes,
Thank you.
Good luck.
And that'll be it for tonight. Thank you.